How much of the film do you think is in Arthur's head, percentage wise?
Okay, I have a really controversial theory. You know how like throughout the movie, like he's living his life and stuff, and then for 1 second we see him in like in a room with a white door, and like he's talking to somebody, or like he looks at the clock, and that scene is just for 5 seconds.
There's 2 of those.
Yeah, and then at the very end, you see him in that same room, and he's like cuffed, and like he's in the hospital wing.
Did you see the theory of the time?
Yeah, and the time, like throughout the movie, the time is every time they look at the clock, it's always never changes.
Yeah.
So there's a theory where I think that from the whole movie, he's been in that room just thinking about everything.
He's in a psych ward kind of.
Yeah,
you're saying.
He's in the psych ward already, and he's just thinking of all that shit. Because they show a glimpse of the white room, and then they show it at the end when he kills the guard, so people think, oh, he goes to prison and then he escapes again. But I think the whole time he's like in the hospital wing.
And if that's the case, that means they're putting a lot of weight on the second movie.
Yeah, the second movie is gonna have a big effect on if that's true or not.
Is there a second movie?
Yeah,
Lady Gaga's in it.
With Lady Gaga, bro.
They posted
as Harley Quinn.
The actual
Okay, but wait.
La danse à deux.
Maybe
La folie à deux.
I agree. Maybe he is in the asylum.
But the second movie will debunk like all the theories we have. But like you could say, arguably, you could even say that like when he's in the police car and they crash, he fucking dies, and when they're pulling out his body, he's dead, and that's just him, like, but in heaven or in hell thinking about that.
Okay, like I saw that about how if every
clocks.
clock in the movie is at the same time, it could be, well, maybe it's just a hypothesis, but like he was in the asylum the whole time, but these could be actions that did happen, and that's caused him in the asylum.
Or he's been in the asylum. He's been dreaming about
the
this
clock
whole life.
represents the present.
The present of his storytelling. He's like kind of telling
his mind,
a story.
you know?
No, I think at least like I would say half of the movie is in reality.
So you think the whole movie?
Yeah, I think the whole movie.
What brings you to half? Like, what do you think?
Okay, because if it was entirely, because if you have to think about it, he's glorifying the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
In his mind, and a lot of it is not very glorious way of thinking. So if you look at it, for example, there's parts where he's fully daydreaming, like when he daydreams that he's on Murray's show, and then there's parts where he's daydreaming, but you're not in his head. You're watching him daydream physically.
That's what I agree with you, because that's what I had mentioned previously in the podcast.
Yeah, but you don't know that though. Like, because if you see that incident of the hospital wing or the psychiatric wing, like who says that like everything we see, like it's not true, like the Sophie, his girlfriend, like
how about
all that
maybe
stuff.
another theory maybe is the fact that I agree with you in the sense that sometimes I feel like we are watching him, where the parts where you hear, like you see him in his head, that's why the time never moves. That's like maybe it's specifically when we see the clocks, it's when we're in his head and we're in a fake reality that's within him.
I think what happens is the whole movie is him reminiscing as to what happened
in the psych ward. Maybe that's
in
as
the
well.
psych ward.
Yeah,
and it would make sense because it really surprised me, like with the film style, because it's what was his name, the director? Todd
Phillips.
Todd Phillips. It's not his film style. And this was something completely new on a huge scale. You know, you're taking on Joker for a film. And it reminded me of, like, you know, art cinema in a way. Have you ever watched artsy cinema?
No,
movies?
I've only seen Shade Cinema.
Shade Cinema. Subscribe to the channel.
Like the video.
Turn on the notifications. But, like, art cinema is, like, very slow. You know, that's one of the main characteristics of art cinema. It's slow. And I think Joker was a perfect result because it was a good blend of Hollywood with art, and it gave you this Hollywoodian art, which is that's why it was so successful. But at the same time, it could explain our thinking, our debate right now, partly in his head or reality. And art cinema does tend to play in those fields.
I mean, it'd be kind of cool the fact that, like, let's say like we're watching him and that's like real, but like when we're in his head, right? Like time doesn't really work the same way, right? So that's why maybe the time doesn't move, because we're within his realm of thoughts.
So you're saying the hospital scene is where he's hallucinating?
Yeah.
So
in a sense,
when you're saying he's hallucinating that he's in the hospital, the mental asylum,
the white room.
The white room.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, because it's tough. Because
But he
Honestly,
ended-
I think the film, there's no like answer. There's no real
it's
answer.
made to
He's
debate.
made it in a way that like some people could think that like half of it is real, half of it is fake. Some people could think the whole thing is fake. Some people think he dies at the end of the movie. So like when he's like smiling on the cab, like he dies in that car crash, and then that
Mhm.
just is subconscious like drifting.
and
When-
it's
So people said that too. So like the as I've watched it like
I doubt it.
two, 3, 4 times, and like every time I'm like there's always that like instance of like
Okay.
is this really happening?
How about theory? When he got in the car crash, right? Like he got hit, he didn't die. That's where he got caught, obviously, because he was kind of in a run, right? In the sense where he would like no one really knew where he was. Where
I mean, he killed a man on live TV.
I mean, exactly. That's right after, but like they're going after him. He gets hit by a car. That's why he's in the asylum. So he's like, I think talking to someone, Harley Quinn, who is a therapist,
Bro,
and so he's
Stop.
explaining
Oh,
what happened, right? Because he got hit. Now he's in the asylum. He's talking to someone,
and
and
she's
that's
gonna
the
be
story.
mentally ill too, and she's gonna
100%.
fall in love with
but
him.
She isn't mentally well at the
She
moment
is.
when they're talking.
we'll see what happens with
She-
it.
Oh, bro,
You'll
this is too
see
good.
about that.
But it's interesting because you can
That's actually not bad.
Todd
Luka.
Phillips honors Joker by making the film so complex.
100%.
You can't decipher any Joker. Like all the Jokers that exist, you can't explain them, and it's perfect because that's what makes this movie perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
but I think
Because
that'd be
you
a great
can't
way.
explain this movie at all.
Yeah, it'd be but what my theory would be a great way to how they would link that to the second movie is that the fact that they've been in this, the first movie was in the asylum, and he's explaining from his side what happened, right? Like what
And he might
the
be
story
lying.
was. It could be it could be all a lie.
He might be
never-
lying because
never
Joker
went
is
to the- yeah.
devious as fuck, you know?
And wait, also something to think about. Here's a question I came up with just like last second. Do you think this Joker is the same Joker that the Batman ends up fighting?